Hello, hello, and welcome back to another episode of She's Doing All Right. And if we're being honest, she is procrastinating. There are multiple jobs that I should be editing right now and filming and writing, and I don't want to do any of them. So I'm doing a podcast episode instead because it's long overdue. So if you're here, thank you for being here. I'm sorry I abandoned you. We're back. I've been doing a lot of reading lately. I'm trying to do less time on my phone. I've talked about that in the past. So I am combating that with lots of reading. And one of the books I read inspired this episode. So welcome to things I hated about my very sheltered childhood that I will be doing with my own kids, because as an adult, I can see the benefits and I get why my mom did them. If you're new here, thank you for being here. My name is Sarah Carter. I'm your host, and we are going to jump into sort of like a motherhood conversation thing. The title of this is a little bit misleading because the very first one I didn't actually hate. The rest of them I could have done without as a child, but I definitely need them now. I see that. But the first one was reading aloud. My mom read to us out loud until I was 16. And I loved this as a kid. We would make popcorn. We did I think we did the Chronicle of Narnia series. We did the Little House on the Prairie series. And the very last book that I remember her reading us was when I was 16. It was called Code Orange. I don't know the author. I only remember a couple things about the story. And my mom, I pulled it from the library and my mom was like, please let me read this to you. This looks so interesting. And I was like, I'm old enough to read. Like, I don't need you to read this to me anymore. And it's not like suitable for the younger kids. Most of what we read out loud was like family friendly. So she's like, just let me read it to you and your sister, and then it'll be the last book. Like, I won't ask anymore. I was like, okay, fine. And so she did. I'm pretty sure I snuck in and read ahead of it, so I knew what was going to happen, but I let her read us that last book. And it was actually so nice, like, to have that memory, because it was the end of a chapter. That wasn't a pun that I tried to make. That was very much accidental. And this memory was triggered from this book that I'm reading called the Read Aloud Family. And if you have young children, I would definitely recommend reading this book. There's another one called the Read Aloud Handbook, I think, but it's from a different author, and it's what the Read Aloud Family is inspired by. I don't know what the first one is, if that's got like some faith-based background. This one, I just had to skim through it a little bit on certain parts because the author is very much Christian, and she throws that in a lot in the aspect of like, we're teaching our children to read so that they can get a better education, so they can go live a godly life. And I'm like, I just want them to live a life where they know how to think for themselves. But that is besides the point. If you can manage this, it's not too bad. She just throws it in there a little bit. And I try to always think of like, if this was somebody talking about their Muslim religion or Islam, I wouldn't have a problem with it. It's the Christian trauma for me. So if you have any of that, that book might be a little bit, just jump over those parts. It was very, very valuable. She mentions at one point how we teach our children to read, and we read aloud to them until they're old enough to do it themselves. So they're like 5 or 6, and then we just send them off. Okay, go read by yourself. But unfortunately, by doing that, we are actually limiting their comprehension, abilities, and their skills with listening. And we are not introducing them to a bigger vocabulary. The words that we speak on a day-to-day basis are not necessarily what we're going to find in books, and vice versa. So kids can learn a huge vocabulary by reading and by hearing us pronounce those words, because they might not be able to read a full chapter book, but they can sit and listen to us read it. It's also really good for their imagination. So that's a little bit of a long-winded first point, but reading aloud was something that I was so grateful that my mom did that with us, and I am trying really hard to incorporate it even more so into now. And we do podcasts and audiobooks, my husband and I, on road trips, and I'm so excited to bring audiobooks into our family trips and just as home things, you know? The second rule that we did not like, but I will be enforcing, is no sleepovers. Certainly not until they are much, much older, and even then, probably not anywhere but my own house, and I'm going to have to know those children. And yeah, I just think that there's a lot of things as I become a mom myself and I learn what the world is like and what people are like. Often it's the people you trust most who hurt your kids. And so I will not be allowing sleepovers. My husband doesn't, sorry, there's a garbage truck. I don't know if you can hear that. My husband is kind of on board, kind of not. He doesn't really understand it. But as of right now, I don't think there's any need for them. Obviously, he's 2. We're definitely not going to do anything under 10, and definitely not at other people's houses, maybe our own. But we don't really have to worry about the whole argument of family and stuff, because even with that, like, we don't have family in town. But if we did, I would be a little bit hesitant about sleepovers as long as the kids can't talk. And yeah, you don't know people as well as you think you do. So it makes me a little bit nervous, knowing my own childhood and thinking of like all the sleepover things we did that as kids we loved the freedom. And as an adult, I'm looking back going, oh my goodness, a lot of your life could have been prevented had you not done that sleepover at that time. So, and had a very easy life on that side of things. So anyway, the third thing my mom did that we did not love growing up, but I absolutely stand behind it now, was the computer was in the living room and we had very limited screen time. Now, this is definitely in a different era. This was like 15 years ago, and we still had dial-up internet, because it's crazy how much fast everything has changed. We had our email address and our Facebook. So we'd check our emails, and like that was our pen pal stuff essentially. And then Facebook was pretty lame. There was nothing on there that was fun. Oh, and we had MSN, or that was our email. So chatting with friends on MSN, that was a super fun thing to do. But we only got 30 minutes a week. It was Fridays, I think. And yeah, it was, my mom was right there. So you were very careful about what you clicked or even typing, because you never knew when she just popped her head over your shoulder and like read your conversation. One thing on that though is that I do know they say hyper protected kids or super sheltered kids become sneaky kids. And this is true. My siblings and I, or my sister and I anyway, had so many code words with our friends so that when we were chatting, it could be a very simple, innocent looking sentence, and it would be like, we're making plans for the weekend. If you're too protective of the kids, they're going to become sneaky. And we thankfully didn't have to get too sneaky, but we did get a little sneaky. So that is something I will be monitoring and being careful about, is I want to give my kids freedom and I want them to trust me with their stuff. I don't want to have to create sneaky children. The very last thing that I am definitely going to be enforcing, but not to the extent that was enforced for me, because it was a little insane. We are going to have very many conversations about the content we consume. And I think that this is very valuable for us as adults as well. Growing up was a little insane. We had to write, my sister and I are like 15, 16, and we had to write a 3-paragraph essay explaining why we wanted a CD, what we thought would, like how we thought the CD and the music and the lyrics would benefit us in our walk with God specifically, because it was a very, very religious household. And we also had to include a paragraph of background of the author, artist, and how they would be a good influence in our life. So it was really good to know, because sometimes I'd love a song and I'd look at the artist and I'd be like, oh, you're actually not somebody I really agree with, or whatever. It just made it more, you're just conscious of what's behind it. But it also taught us to listen to the lyrics. And now, much older, I love the lyrics of songs, and I will listen to the lyrics, and if the lyrics don't make sense or if they don't make me feel good, then the whole song's trash. My husband, on the other hand, he's good with a good beat and good drumming and good guitar riff. The lyrics can be whatever. He doesn't care, as long as the rest of the song is good. And we are so opposite on that. And I'm like, how are you not listening to these lyrics? So anyway, we never had to do essays for books because we really only shopped at the approved bookstore. And library, we had our own cards, so we just sneak out the books we wanted to read that we didn't think mom and dad would approve of. But the CDs was the big one, because it's hard to hide music when you want to play it in your room or whatever, and parents come in and they're like, who is this artist? I don't know this person. So yeah, that was not the level of intensity I wanted as a child, and I'm not going to be doing that to my own kids. There won't be essays written, or if there are, it'll be like, honestly, it'll probably be a punishment. Like, okay, you broke curfew, or you're being disobedient or being mouthy. I want you to write a 3-paragraph, do research. So their punishment is going to become, or their discipline is going to become like educational, I guess. But who knows? I'm so far away from having teenagers. We don't know how that's going to be parenting yet, especially as the world changes so fast. So that is kind of the thing, though. The world is changing so fast, and it's hard to know what to do and how to raise good people who think well and are well-rounded. I thought I was well-rounded. I'm not, or I wasn't. I like to think I am more so now, and I hope I continue expanding my world and expanding my knowledge and the way I think. But growing up, I thought because I studied all these different subjects, I knew a lot. And that wasn't the case. I was very pretentious. I was rude. I was mean. I was insecure. I was really hurting. And I just didn't even know that those were things I could be because I knew so much. I learned Latin. So how could I possibly not know how you feel over in Afghanistan? I don't know. That was really it, though. I really thought that my life was, I could empathize with anyone because my life was equally as bad. And that is just laughable at this point. So hopefully my children are not like that. I will do everything in my power to not make that happen. But it is going to be hard to parent. And I know that not every family is going to be doing the read aloud stuff. Most kids have their own devices by the time they're 13, but that is something that is so important to me, is the research on how anxiety and depression is linked to children who have access to a phone before the age of 13. Like between 10 and 13, I believe that there's like a huge spike in anxiety and depression, and between or the kids that get a phone by 15 to 16, it's down, but still there. And I'm not surprised by that. I mean, we have this epidemic essentially of people addicted to screens, myself one of them, and it literally can make you nauseous. It makes you depressed. It gives you anxiety. It's showing you information that you really shouldn't have access to at this point. Like, we should not be knowing so much so fast. It's very overwhelming. And our emotions are going up and down all the time because like one video is happy, the next video is so traumatic to watch. And like, I don't need my 10-year-old or 15-year-old to be experiencing that. So I think that's something very cool, is that the younger generation, I've noticed anyway, are kind of stepping away from the online presence, and they use their phones more for communication again rather than social media. So anyway, that's a little bit of a side tangent. What kind of episode would this be without one? But yeah, those are a few of the things that I have thought of that I don't know that I liked when I was growing up, but thank you, Mom, for doing them. And I would love to now hear what kind of things you learned from your parents. What did they do when you were growing up that you absolutely hated or didn't like, that you're kind of thinking, I get what you're doing. I'm going to probably be doing that same stuff to my children or with my children. You can let me know your answer by emailing me at sarahmgcarter@gmail.com, or you could send me a DM or write a comment over on the podcast Instagram. She's doing all right. And my personal Instagram and TikTok is sarah.g.carter, and that is just where I post most often. I'm trying to get better at the Instagram, but I mean, I completely dropped the ball on the podcast as a whole, so Instagram is much more of a side thing. Anyway, thank you so much for listening to this. I am sorry I'm so breathless. I think I just had a coffee and it's making me talk fast and not breathe. So that's very fun. I will see you in the next episode, which is hopefully going to be next week, but I make no promises. Okay, goodbye.